Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another section of What Have We Been Playing. We are not doing a topic this year, this week, because we had a lot that we had been playing, and because last week's was a very special segment that we focused just on one game, we needed to balance out. So, how you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well. It's been a week, but
it really has been.
I got to experience some new loves in my life with some of these games, and I really want to talk about them this week. And I thought that we could finally escape Metroid talk.
Yeah,
but it seems like that's still going to creep in.
No, it's absolutely going to creep in. Also, by the way, when we're recording this, Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 were just delayed.
Yeah, so finale to our news segment, that's for sure.
Yeah, or an addendum.
I'm not surprised at this point, especially considering what developer has been working on those two games.
Yeah, and the co-leaders that were appointed when the president left, one of them just announced that she's stepping down. So the co-leader is just down to one leader. Definitely nothing's on fire in that place, but we're done with news for now. We have to just talk about what we have been playing.
We're going to talk about fun things now.
Yes, like especially this first one. Paul, what have you been playing? Because I sort of did, but you played more of this one. Talk to me about it.
I played a lot of this, Alejandro. I played Resident Evil 8 finally. The game that I was excited about when it was announced, when it came out, but I waited. I was a good boy. I was great. I held off, and sure enough, like you said, like I said, there was a Halloween themed sale for Resident Evil 8, and maybe it feels like to some people that it wasn't a big thing to wait for like what, $25 off, but to me that was a big deal. 33%, and the fact that I was actually able to hold off on this, but the fact that I finally put this sucker in and I played it. I have beat the game now 2.5 times. I played through it once with my wife, so it is the first game we've started and finished together, with me of course being in the driver's seat and she playing backseat gamer, because she does not handle movement well at all. She doesn't handle,
especially in that.
No, she doesn't handle the right stick ability at all well, so in games that require it, it's definitely better. And I realized that it's not just a fact of her not playing a lot of games, but even in Pokemon, she says if she's moving too fast on the bike, it'll make her nauseous sometimes. So that's like just a her personally thing, so she has to watch herself. But anyway, I was more than happy to oblige by playing something and watching her react to it.
Especially that kind of game.
Yes, I wasn't expecting her to be into it, but when I remember when the demo got dropped, I mentioned it to her briefly, and she said, "Oh, you need to re-download that right now because I want to see it." And so we walked through the whole castle, and she just like fell in love with the concept. She laughed at all the memes that everyone talked about, Lady Dimitrescu, and
about being stepped on.
The big mommy memes and all that stuff. And so yeah, it was really entertaining, and so she watched through all of that, and fortunately, since it was such a action-oriented game, she was like, all right, this is really cool, gorgeous. I had to bring the sensitivity to like 2.
Dang. So you had to like turn real slow.
Oh, I had to turn real slow for her because she could only handle like so much of it. Even then, she would like look away while I was moving around faster and watch more intently during like big cutscene moments, big gameplay moments, boss fights, but she was always there like kind of digesting it. And basically she had to sit like halfway across the entire room to watch it as well. So it was a process, but this isn't her talking about it, this is me talking about it. So
you like Resident Evil 8.
I like Resident Evil 8. This was a great way for them to build on everything that happened in the 7th game, from the first person shooter action side of it. The Ethan Winters character and his ability to do things has been in universe explained as getting training from Chris Redfield. so that he can reload faster, move faster, do things a lot quicker and more FPS hero style. I love the passion that comes across with him being solely motivated by getting his daughter back.
Mhm.
It's not really spoiler since it happens in the first 10 minutes, but the twists and turns in the plot were really interesting. I mean, some of it's like dorky action hero style things, and a lot of people likened it to like Ash versus the Evil Dead. And I think there's still a place for that, because I loved all of the campiness and the silliness of like, my goodness, this dude is just getting like shredded by stuff and he just kind of shrugs it off. And which is a plot point
very early
that
happens.
they continue like just messing this guy up so bad, but it actually becomes a plot point later on that I will not spoil or talk about. However, the things that they did in this plot had me so excited for what Resident Evil is going to do in this new continuity, more than I've been excited for Resident Evil in a while.
So I played, just to kind of jump in, I also got the game. I haven't finished it. Hey kitten, you're looking quite angry.
He's got an RBF, but
yeah.
He's actually very happy. He got impatient, so he's sitting in my lap right now.
Yeah. Unlike you, I've only played like an hour of this game because I did the stupid thing of playing this on Halloween night. And it was way too spooky to keep on going. So, just real quick, like, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but does the game walk back or fully embraces the fact that this is just going beyond a bio-degenerating disease into full supernatural? Because
it is very much going towards that, it feels, because I kind of told you, like, in that one sentence of it, so the whole thing is that I'm realizing that they are saying they can kind of do whatever they want with the virus. Everything from, like, I mean, you remember how they said in Resident Evil 4, I think, they explained how the creatures get so huge is by, like, the cells regenerating so fast of mitosis or whatever. So, like, they can kind of throw whatever science-y babble in there to make the creature do whatever they want. And through that, you get these crazy things like, I can't remember what it is, but the entire setup is the four people, as you know, they're like the four lords of the village. Each of them have been adopted into this situation, more or less. But I'm trying to make sure I don't say too much about it, but more or less their powers are based on something singular that happened to them. And that's why they're in their position, and that's kind of why all of the creatures are the way they are. And from there, we understand what the big bad person is, because I don't know if they mentioned the big bad yet? I think they have, because where are you at, though?
I found a few survivors in the village after the initial being cornered and seeing this dude with a hammer.
Yeah. And did you find, like, was just those two people, the old man and the daughter?
Yeah.
Okay, so they will very soon, within literally like the next 2 minutes, are going to tell you the name of the person that has caused all this.
I want to keep playing it, but I can't play that game at night. It was so scary that I didn't remember 7 being this scary, or maybe it was. And I played it in different circumstances, but really first person Resident Evil really hits different.
Yes.
Especially with such a limited field of view and constantly being like stepped on by those stupid lichens that I remember I said, F this, I'm out. I texted that. I was like, I'm not vibing with the lichens, but you told me that they move away from that. So I'm like, okay, good thing. I'm not liking them as enemies personally.
So there's a reason why that group is lichens, or similar to like a werewolf. And every point after that, they only show up in the village, I believe.
All right.
There's different enemies in the different regions. So that's one thing to mention. The other one was a tip is they don't tell you this, but if you hit back and circle, you can do that 180 like with the other
all the
ones.
other games.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't tell you that you could do that, and I spent an entire game not realizing it, so I'm like turning around to run.
Especially
But,
if you're
you
in
can
two
do that.
sensitivity.
Yes, I very quickly had to try to figure out ways to do it, but I also played it on casual. So by the
I am
end,
also playing it on casual. I'm not touching that thing in normal. Maybe until New Game Plus, if you can carry the.
I played through it on normal, my first playthrough, and what I ended up doing was I played through it, and then I played back through the game on New Game Plus on casual to the exact point that I left off, so I could play with my wife.
Mhm.
But I had one gun that had infinite ammo just in case to like make sure the forward momentum was always happening.
And
But that was my backup.
does the
plan.
infinite ammo thing happen the same as in like RE5 if you fully upgrade a weapon?
Yes. So
Okay.
it is. You have to fully upgrade the weapon in the main story, so that means you have to use the story currency. And then after you've beaten the game, it unlocks the idea of challenges, which I think that was already a thing.
Mhm.
And you like shoot 5 crows in that are flying away or something, and it's like gives you points or whatever.
It really feels like a mix of 4 and 7. It absolutely feels like
Yeah.
they have merged those two games in this
But
one.
like that's the best thing about it, I think, because 4 obviously is really strong, and then 7 added a lot of really good stuff, but that was clearly their experimental phase,
Mhm.
and 8 is them dialing that in just crisp. I still don't fully like that the weapons are still like kind of third person-y.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like you never really look. It's like the Battlefront style
Mhm.
where it stays off to the side. But like I got used to it after a while. And the guns feel way better this time around, I think. They have a lot more variation of them.
Are you playing with the adaptive triggers?
Yes.
Man, like trying to aim a shotgun, like it does the thing of like holding L2 so strong
Yeah.
and to aim, and then like it adds a certain level of desperation that I appreciate, because I've always mentioned that adaptive triggers on a PS5 have been hit and miss. Some games do it really well, other games completely botch it, and I feel this is like in the adding to the experience of the desperation, because it's not just a quick pull trigger. Obviously you can turn those off in the options, but I kind of want to leave them on, kind of like I did with Deathloop. So,
I think this is one of the few that really does well because you feel the power of every gun, especially the shotgun is perfect. I struggle with the sniper rifle, but that's
oh,
probably
there's a sniper rifle.
personal
Okay,
thing.
that wasn't in
is.
7.
They give you a lot of different weapons. Just for this one, there's like 3 different shotguns, 2 different pistols in the
Mhm.
regular game, and a few other things. And then New Game Plus gives you like 3 new pistols after that, 2 different rifles, like like another shotgun variant, like all these different things you can buy to unlock and play through the game 100% with these guns that literally weren't in the game for the first time around.
Mhm.
So it's like even if it's the same stuff, you're playing it with new weapons that you can unlock, plus the infinite ammo on top of that. So you can buy the gun, it shows up in your store, you can play it normally with regular ammo, and then if you get the extra investment, you can put in for infinite.
Now, how long is it? Now you play beating it
I
twice, or
beat
you're
it in under 9 hours.
perfect. That sounds
Um,
beautiful.
but this every time after that, especially when I understood where to go and what to do and how to do it, I shaved that off to like 4 hours. I
Great.
actually got a challenge for healing less than 4 times throughout the whole course of the game, and it's funny because the irony is not lost on me that I bounced off so hard of Metroid,
Mm-hmm.
and now I am basically doing the exact same thing that PJ is doing
Uh-huh.
on a different game. Because I'm like, oh, I can shave my time down by doing this. Like, oh, look at this weapon that I unlocked. Look at this
Now,
cool option.
do you understand why like thinking just about game length is so stupid?
Yeah.
Look, there's replay
depends,
value. When there's like
Because-
inherent replay value in short games, trying to do it that way,
Yes.
that you can. It's better having a repeatable game, I think, than one that is just one big chunk that then you don't touch again because it's so long.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a small caveat that I would add, because something like Metroid Dread, where when you play through the whole game, you kind of experience it all, and the only thing you gain afterwards is, like you said, that ability to cut down the time. Where Resident Evil adds, like, you can do the time, but you can also do mercenaries, you can also do all of the weaponry, you can also do all of the other optional things that you didn't know about playing through, finding new things. And I think that Capcom specifically, like I had said to you, is the absolute unequivocal king of new game plus modes in their modern game. I mean, not just modern, I'd say anything.
They've been bringing it since forever.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Devil May Cry series. The game doesn't even really begin until you've beaten it once, where you get all of your other difficulty modes. All of your abilities carry over into all subsequent moves and playthroughs, and you can keep unlocking things.
And it's what I keep saying, that's the replay value.
Yeah,
it's not just about the finishing the game, but how many ways can you like interact with that game within its limited time. It's decent limited time, and I feel Capcom knows how to do a perfect amount of length, I would say. And even a game like Resident Evil 4, I would say, is one of the ones that doesn't hold up in the length in a way, because that's one's a little too long for what you want. So hearing you beat it in 9 hours is like, that's good, because then if I like it like I did like other games like 5, that its replay value was so intrinsic to me, like going through it, like I got down to be able to beat Resident Evil 5 in 2 hours with a fully upgraded Wesker Desert Eagle. It was so good, because like shoot with the infinite ammo. So.
And it feels so good, especially when on that later playthroughs, you don't even have to worry about wasting time on items, and you just go through your like movie style John Wicking everything, and it turns into a different game, because you no longer play it like a survival horror, you play it like the action super hot style game that you know it is.
Exactly. So, and that's the thing, like the that first run through is like can be special on its own as you're learning it, like creeping around, and then you basically break it in your subsequent playthrough. So,
which is I forgot to mention this, and then we can move on. That game still has one of the best scary segments and scariest segments that I hated in all of
I have heard there's one specific section that is like,
and it is
absolutely horrifying.
You play through you're gonna go through like the castle segment, and after that is a part where I was shaking on the end portion of it, and I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't heard.
I have heard that the one thing this game does different is like 7 had all this sense of dread that never let off. This one's more of like a roller coaster, in a way, that because it's not as it doesn't hit you with that sense of dread all the time. When it finally hits you back, it's even more terrifying because you have your peaks and valleys. So that makes me excited, because being in the village is very dreadful. Like, especially when you have 10 lichens following you.
The funniest thing is how they take that, and eventually, like, the village is going to almost become a safe haven for you. And you're going to be like, oh, thank God I'm back in the village.
Oh, dang.
Compared to what is going on elsewhere in the game. But like you said, it's really so good, actually, now that I think about it, with these valleys and mountains, because in like Resident Evil 2 remake, they'll put other enemies back in the path of you, and like bring back enemies you already killed and stuff, because you're like,
then they
God.
Put the freaking Mr. X kind of factor, which this game has, right? Like it basically has its own version of Mr. X.
In certain areas, there's like a certain enemy that's kind of haunting you in 2 spots.
And I'll say this, is that getting a little overused? Because 7 had it, obviously 2 had it, 3 had it, and now this one had it. It's like all of these games are adding it.
I will say it's a lot less pronounced, and to the point that I kind of forgot about it at times. And it's so easily worked able to be worked around that it's almost not really a threat. So if I could say one sort of negative thing, is that you can kind of solve a lot of the problems even without weaponry by understanding the map.
Mhm.
Because I don't want to go too far into it, but just the idea that, Mr. X is like you had to remap the entire thing in your head to go around him.
That's what made it
um
satisfying though, because you could plan ahead
yes,
with how well
Resident Evil
designed
8
the police.
sort of has that, but it's almost a little tricky because you do the same thing for certain other enemies in general. So you almost like, once you understand how to cheese the AI, it's not really a threat.
Does it have a moment where you think you're in a safe place, but it turns out it is not? Because I had that moment with RE2, where you're in the center of the police station and you can save
Yeah.
there, but Mr.
Uh,
X can go through there. I remember I was like, oh, at least this is a big place. And then I see him walk in, and I almost I literally soiled myself because I had to run to the bathroom when that happened. I was like, crap.
not in the extent that you would say, like, there's even with the character hunting you, you're still able to have a safe place. There is one area that I can think of that they specifically flip that on its head, and that you're definitely not safe, but it's almost like an afterthought in that moment because you're so focused on, oh my gosh, I have paused this thing to now be in my area. I need to get out of here. And I don't even think about the fact that where I'm running through was a safe place that the enemy's absolutely able to get me to now. So, yes and no in a way, but I
Mhm.
think they understand that people were going to cheese that in one way and then also be a little too nervous about it
Mhm.
in the other. So they dialed it in, and I think they definitely dialed it back on the concept of the hunting character throughout.
Mhm. Can't wait to play more. The thing is that
Yes.
my mind is so intrinsically tied to other things that I'm gonna talk later. But tell me about all these other games you've been playing before
I'll
I go to
most
mine.
of the others I'll
Huh?
just jump through. I played more of Hell Let Loose with friends of mine, which is a terrifying experience but amazing,
Mhm.
because it has immense highs as you're working together to take something over, and then immense lows where you're walking across a field and you get sniped by somebody that there's absolutely no way you were going to be able to fight back against, and you really need to take that one in bursts. Insurgency Sandstorm, I played a little bit more of that with some friends. It's a little bit buggy, a little bit glitchy, but the nostalgia and feeling of that close Rainbow Six old school feel is
Mhm.
fantastic, and I can't let it go. Marvel Spider-Man, I went back to that very briefly, played a little bit of it, still holds up, still feels great. Um, it's just one of those comfort foods that every once in a while I want to play. And then Jedi Fallen Order, played a little bit more of that. I
Mhm.
really didn't. I still hate that they don't let me skip cutscenes, but it's just like kind
That
of
and
fun
Ghost of
to
Tsushima.
work through. I know. Wait, I thought you could skip.
No, in Ghost of Tsushima you can't.
I swear I thought we could
Nope.
at some point, but okay, maybe not. Okay. So yeah, and then Metroid Zero Mission, played a little bit more of that, beat Kraid, beat about half of it, and then I stopped, and I really need to go back to it. And the last thing I wanted to mention is Carrion,
Mhm.
which I got for $15, and you are playing basically as if
A
you play
monster in
through
a Metroidvania, right? That's basically how
basically.
it's been pitched to me.
Yeah, the problem is I didn't know it was a Metroidvania until I started playing it. And the amount of despair I felt when I was like just wrecking through, and then I found my way like through all of the tunnels, and then I went to an area that I was already in, and I went, "Oh no. I've been to here before. I gotta figure out my way through this thing without a map." I got lost, and I had to quit because I couldn't figure out where to go. I was so mad because
Directionally challenging.
I thought it was gonna be like a linear storyline of like you're getting your power-ups, you're wiping out dudes, which was really fun, and you're like aliening them with like hiding in the vents and sniping people and sucking them up and ripping them in half
But
and
that's the thing.
stuff.
You've been playing Castlevania Advanced Collection. Obviously, you played Dread. You played Zero Mission, which we mentioned
I'm playing
last
through
week.
so many Metroid.
Exactly. So your mind should be like the language of that genre should be like so intrinsically
I
tied.
think I'm tired of it. That's
That
my
could be fair.
problem.
Yeah, that could be fair. So
Because I've played through 5 or 6 Metroidvanias in a row now with like releases and older releases and stuff. Well, the problem is with Carrion, there's literally not a map.
oh, okay,
I had to
that's
look it up online to see where this map is and where I'm supposed to go. Like,
can't do
it's
that.
Literally,
Yeah, and Metroidvania without a map is a no. It's a big no for me.
It's terrible. It's less of Metroidvania, and like there's this area, and then there's this area, then there's that area, but it's like there's only really one way to get up and down through those. But the problem is, like, when they don't really tell you where to go, the problem is they have a echolocation feature where you hit a button and you growl, and then the things that you're supposed to go to kind of make like a sound wave effect back at you. The problem is they're all the same color, and there's no indication of kind of where it actually is.
Makes sense.
And it's like I'll see bases that I've already taken over will still react to that, and so I don't know if it's something that I've already done or something I need to do. So it's very obtuse in that direction side of it. But when it really works is when you have like what was it, that samurai game that was on the Switch, that you could rewind time for.
Mark of the Ninja?
Not quite. There was another one that I'm gonna think about it later. But anyway, the idea is that you've got this group, like My Name is Pedro kind of style of, all right, you've got these enemies, figure out how to take them all out, and then you move on to the next room where there's enemies and you got to figure out how to take them out. That's where I love it. The whole like, all right, now you got to get through these areas and take over things that are on the macro level that I'm like not really vibing with. So that was all that
you've been playing. So what have I been playing? Like I mentioned, I also played a little bit of Resident Evil 8, but I haven't played as much. I also started playing Guardians of the Galaxy, a game that I was waiting for reviews on, and obviously we talked about that in our news show from last week, that it was reviewing really well, especially compared to Square's previous Marvel game, Marvel's Avengers. And I'll say this, it's crazy to me that a game that it's basically old recipe Uncharted is so refreshing these days. Like a game that's just a story that you kind of go through, and with very simple fun gameplay and with such great writing and characters. It's like, I'm so glad that Eidos Montreal, after they did Deus Ex, it's either Mankind Divided or Human, the last one they did, because then they did Tomb Raider, the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and then did this one.
Was the one.
Yeah, I'm glad that they did something that is so pure in a way. And here's what's fun: combat is like a simple mix of Uncharted style shooting with a little bit of like Metroid style lock-on, but also with the ability to control your character's Final Fantasy VII remake style, with like different ults and all that. You only play as one character. You play as Star-Lord.
Yeah.
But then like your characters all have like specific moves that you can always put when you hold the L1 bumper, and you mix and match that. And that to me adds a little extra dimension to the game that's just not just a normal run-of-the-mill third-person shooter. I love the tone. It feels like you're expanding more of what the Guardians of the Galaxy movies did, but with the added advantage that you get more time with these characters. In between missions, you spend time in your ship. You can talk with Rocket, with Groot. Yeah, even though he always keeps saying I am Groot, he says so much I am Groot in this game. It's hilarious. Talking with Drax, talking with Gamora, and them being able to kind of step aside any uncanny valleyness of, man, these are not the MCU characters. It has like a more stylized look to it. That's not like the event. Yeah, that's a little bit more cartoony, but not quite cel shading. And I think that helps give this game its tone. I haven't finished it yet because I've been playing another stuff, but it's been like pretty refreshing to see that we may be getting back to this style of game, and it's been like well received instead of everyone wanting things to just be endless, huge, and all that. Kind of like what the IGN reviews said, it's like sometimes it's good to remember what it's like to play a no frills single player campaign story, especially one that's not easily beaten. I've heard that this can take up to 15 hours, and that to me is like that perfect good spot, middle spot of something that's not too short or not too long. Even though especially with Dread in this last few weeks, getting to play that for like 9 or 10 hours, that felt perfect to me for the kind of game it needed to be. But my mind and my desires have all been consumed by the Metroid franchise. After I beat Dread 2 weeks ago, I shoot up my emulator, went through Metroid Fusion again, with the one that I've always said it's my all-time favorite Metroid game, and basically the spiritual predecessor of Dread. That game is just as good as I remember, though Dread does age it quite a bit. I tell you, like, the 360 movement of holding the bumper and being able to like aim, particularly that Dread and Samus Returns introduced. Like, when you go back to Fusion or even Zero Mission that I also played, just having a direction diagonal shooting can really break you. So it took a little bit of an adjustment. Went through Metroid Fusion, beat it in 4 hours. I had never played Zero Mission, though I did appreciate, I mentioned it in our chats and I mentioned it in last week's debate, that Zero Mission is one of the few times that Metroid added an easy mode. So I actually went through the easy mode just to kind of test out and see if having an easier difficulty really broke that game, or would break the design as to them not including easy mode. No, it doesn't. What it gives you is a little bit more health, but exploration, that's just as quote unquote difficult as it can ever be. That you really need to find all your environment, like case analyze, notice that there's actual quality of life, noticing just some things that are off that kind of tells you where to go. Like with Kraid, like I mentioned, it's into previous hallways. Find something that's just slightly correct and you go there. I beat that game in like almost 4 hours also, my first run through. Enjoyed it a lot because Zero Mission is basically the first Metroid. I never played the original because playing through that NES version is rough, very rough. You can play it in the NES, in either the NES Classic or the NES from Nintendo Switch Online. Yeah, that game will break you if you play it that way. Zero Mission is like the perfect kind of remake from that era for if you really want to see where everything started. That's where you play it. But then everything finally consumed me when I actually went back to the Metroid Prime series, the GameCube version. Metroid Prime is a game that I got back in 2002. Never had been able to finish it. Back then, I was too stupid. I was too gullible. I was too dumb to understand game language and exploration. Too not into the exploration side of games like Zelda I was able to break through. Metroid I never could. And playing them now, I was like, was I really that dumb? Because this isn't that complicated. And Metroid Prime, that game's a masterpiece. It still is, even till this day. That even 19 years later, that first game, seeing so much of its influence still resonating, even in games today. From the Batman Arkhams to the Tomb Raiders to even Jedi Fallen Order. And it being such a masterful exploration game that doesn't leave you hung up to dry. I appreciate how if you feel like you're lost, the game knows when to pop in your map, be like, you should go over here, and put like a question mark in a place and doesn't tell you anything else. You just know that, yeah, now I know I can go there. Maybe I can keep exploring here. The map is so well, like you read it so well, and despite the archaicness of being kind of like a first-person shooter that doesn't have dual analog, when you really don't think it as a first-person shooter and think it more as an adventure game that's on first-person, kind of like in traditional Zelda way of like having the left trigger to focus, like target lock on, and then just press the attack button. It's easier to wrap your head around that instead of just wanting everything to be like a double stick. But I can see how, like PJ mentioned in our discussion, when he, back in the day, he first played Halo 3 and then went back to Metroid. That would be rough. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that game really grabbed me. I played it for like an entire week and I got close to 100%ing it. And I appreciated that it didn't have too much BS like some Metroid games have. Like we mentioned the boss for Metroid Dread.
Yeah.
However, thankfully, like, I had never owned the second game. I have only had the first one and owned the third one, but never two. It like, as a happenstance from heaven, something told me, check Facebook Marketplace. Just for reference, if you want to buy Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, which is the sequel, if you go to Amazon, that's retailing for $130. Because when those games get discontinued, they skyrocket in value. In fact, if you want to play the Metroid Prime trilogy that came on Wii, that thing is retailing for $300. A price of a console to get that, because there's no way to acquire unless you have a Wii U. That's a $20 digital download. I don't have a Wii U. I wish I did. Well, happy I didn't. That console was like a waste. But for the few that had, at least they had that option. I got into a Facebook Marketplace and saw someone was selling it for $45. I negotiated to drop it to $40. Got to buy Metroid Prime 2. So I was like, finally, the family's complete. I have it here. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah, I wish I had a real green screen for a background effect. And after I beat Metroid Prime 1, immediately, like the day after, I acquired it from this guy and started playing Metroid Prime 2. I would say I had read some things, I heard some things that Metroid Prime 2 was a Zelda Majora's Mask situation, a sequel that's harder and darker than its predecessor, and I would agree. Yesterday, I spent 2 hours fighting this stupid spider boss that almost made me want to break the controller. And it was difficult. I'll say this, Metroid Prime 1, you never have problems with its controls. When you get to 2, that's when you're like, why isn't there dual analog? That was the point where it's like, okay, maybe your design doesn't quite congrue with the idea that you can have like movement and vision in 2 different sticks here. Which, by the way, if you play it on Wii, you finally do, because they added basically dual analog there with a Wii controller. That game's tough. My God, like that game's tough in ways that I haven't seen a game being tough, but also in a fair way. Metroid games can be like tough, but they know how to feel very rewarding when they finally overcome them. And Dread felt like that with that final boss to me, but even though I would say the ways this game is tough have more of a problem with their controls in GameCube than you would think. So, but I'm in. Like I said, like the thing when you're playing Metroid, and I warn you that this with Zero Mission, you can't just stop playing and expect to come back and be like, yeah, I can pick this right back up. Prime 1, I tried doing this back in 2018 before I heard rumors that the collection may be coming to Switch, and I was like,
oh, that's right.
You know what? If a collection's actually happening that's gonna have like better bells and whistles and all that, I might as well wait. 3 years later, nothing in sight. I tried to go back to where I was and I didn't know, so I had to restart the whole thing. So that happened to me also with Metroid Prime 3 back on Wii. I was playing other games and decided to go back to that one. Completely got lost. I was like, I don't know what you want me to do here. I don't remember what was my objective. These games, they almost feel like a commitment. You gotta, if you're in, you're in. You can't like play. And I was playing all this before acquiring Resident Evil 8 and Guardians. It was so tough for me to try to jump into Resident Evil 8 and Guardians, knowing I could go back and play Metroid. And that's the thing. When a game really grabs you, there's something good to it. And because if I was hating it, I was like, I could have dropped it easily, but especially with that boss, I just kept going at it. And then I made the joke that beating it kind of gave me post-nut clarity. So, which, waiting for the month.
True.
No, not November. And I can't wait to see if there's more BS in that game. But I will say this, like, because you've been making a list, Paul, of like some series that you should try to go back to, and the Metroid Prime trilogy is there.
Yeah. I made it almost as a meme.
Yes.
And when I look back on it, I was like, I kind of really do need to go back and play all this.
Yes. And that's the thing, like Metroid Prime, kind of like what I did with Super Metroid, is such an influential game that I think deserves to be experienced. Yeah. And the original one, I feel it's not that hard. Like, it really isn't. And I really appreciating, and I also mentioned this in our text. It's funny that Metroid Prime and Zelda Wind Waker came out in the same year, because both games have a late game fetch quest. But in Metroid Prime, you see it done really well. And on Wind Waker, at least the GameCube version, you see done not so well. Why I say that? That fetch quest can be accessed from almost the very beginning of Metroid Prime. So if you're diligent with exploration and all that, you can keep acquiring this. And the good thing is that the place that gives you that quest gives you hints, actual hints of where to find these places. In fact, it even colors your text of go to this tunnel. Go where it says in the where it says in the map tunnel, and it's gonna be there. So there's not much. It's not too big as to be frustrating. And if you're diligent of where you are and you keep looking at that, you can keep doing as you go. And then by the end, when that's all that's left, you have like 2 things left, you can get them knocked out quickly, and then you're off to the boss fight. But then if you're not diligent, then you have all 12 of those things to look, and that could be a momentum killer. But it's great design to give you that thing early, especially when exploration is so satisfying in Metroid Prime, especially the way the map is designed. I think you would love that kind of map because it's even were you big on the Jedi Fallen Order map?
Yes.
That one, the Metroid Prime one is even better.
Turn, zoom in, zoom out.
You do exactly that in this one.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I don't know if Metroid Prime 2 has that kind of thing, but with its difficulty, that would be one that I would say only try it if you're feeling brave. Only try it if you want to deal with some extra frustrations, because Prime 2, I feel it's that kind of sequel that's better and worse than the original. I'm feeling the map design of 2 feels better. It feels like it flows a little bit more. It has a frustration that you have to go to a dark world, kind of like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. The only difference is, in that dark world, you lose health unless you're in specific light pockets that you have to shoot for them to like. So there's that annoyance, and some boss fights happen without one of those. When I was fighting the stupid spider boss to get this upgrade for a boost ball, is what you get. You're getting like a speed boost for when you're in ball mode in Metroid, in the Prime series. You fight this bastard in a place that has no light protection, so your health is constantly going down, and and you have to have like quick reflexes because the damage you get is super, like, it's a lot of damage. So it's the kind of frustration. It's like, wow, feels almost insulting. But again, when you beat it, it's like, oh my god, I beat this, I feel like a king. And I read, because after beating it, I had to go read. It's like, what is the hardest thing? And it was that happens early in the game. So I was like, thank Jesus. So that means it's not gonna be as bad. You get stomped early on. You get curb stomped by this stupid spider ing. But then 3, I've heard I played 3. I haven't finished it. 3 is so much easier because of the controls and all that. So I don't know any way you could play 3, because there's the rumors that trilogy is no longer happening on Switch, and 3 is the kind of game that I wouldn't know how they would make it work, because that was so intrinsically tied to the Wiimote. So, and they're very, like, look how clunky the solution was for Skyward Sword. They found a solution. It wasn't the best solution, but they found a way to make it work on handheld. If they want to make Metroid Prime 3 as, how can I say this?
Playable?
Not only as playable, but as true to the original experience as possible, the only way to play it is with 2 Joy-Cons out, and this right one had to be like aiming.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Nintendo wants to do that, because they have found solutions. Even Mario Galaxy, that's a game that was so intrinsically tied to the Wiimote, they made it work. But I feel Prime 3 is so designed that it would be harder. And you know how Nintendo is the king of the minimal viable product in a way. So I don't know if they want to do that, considering they also work on Metroid Prime 4. But I feel it's a crime. There's no way to like modernly play those games unless it's on Wii U. And we know the Wii U, was a financial disaster for them. So, but it sucks that it's only there that you can reasonably play those games at a cheap price. The trilogy there is $20. Why the F does everyone else have the audacity to price it at $300? But that's why I always say physical copies should just go the F out because of this crap. Because then when they get discontinued, how do you acquire them? Right. It's a miracle I got this. It feels so nice. I get all 3 of these games.
That's what messes me up a little bit now because even for something like Samus Returns is only available really digitally, but I have yet to actually look and see if you can even buy it.
Hmm.
Um,
I think if
so
it's
it's like,
digitally, you will. Digitally, yes, you
okay,
can. Yeah.
because I saw that like at least on like the GameStop website, they were like, oh, okay, it's digital and physical, and I was like, cool, physical. And it was like, okay, it's on sale right now for 18 whatever. And then I was like, all right, awesome, where is it? And they're like, we don't have any. Why
And that's
was it on sale then?
right. The scarcity. They should be say sold out in the web page. How hard is that?
Yeah. Um that was weird. And then of course digital version, they don't sell any of those directly because you'd have to have like a code for the game. So
Hmm.
I guess the only option is I have to charge up my 3DS and then I have to go onto the store to see if I can buy it. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to spend $40 on that.
Exactly.
Honestly.
Yeah. I justified the $40 for Metroid Prime 2 for a game from 2004, by the way, in 2021, just for the reason that the market is selling it at $140 or $130.
I mean, you
Which
can
is
turn around and turn a nice profit.
yes, but that's the thing. I'm such a collector myself. Like I still like, my brother doesn't have the reverence. Like literally, he's selling his PS4 today because he just wanted to build his own PC now. Like he doesn't have the reverence of owning stuff. I don't have that. It's very rare for me to sell something. The only reason why I even sold a few of my PS4 discs that I bought, like Knack and Killzone Shadowfall, is because I got a digital version of those games. So it's like I'm selling them, but it's like I'm not losing access to them. And even a bunch of PS3 games that I sold was because I had them on Xbox One backwards compatibility. So
right.
that's the only way I justify selling something. But if I'm gonna lose access to something, it's harder for me. I love collecting, so
I made the genuine mistake when I was younger to sell my Game Boy Color and almost all of the games that I owned for it. Most of like my brother's Game Boy Advance and a lot of games that we had for that as well, computer games, and like all of it was gone. And it wasn't until later that I realized the absolute mistake that I made by doing that. And I think I sold it to Game Trader for just pennies of what it would have been.
and that's the thing, when something's just worth pennies for where you're selling it, you might as well not do it. Obviously there's the problem of maybe cluttering your closet and stuff, so that can be a problem. But in the Game Boy side, at the very least, I think one thing that mitigates it is the abundance of emulators and emulation. And like for example, Metroid Fusion, such a great way to play that game through an emulation. I think the emulator you use for Zero Mission works pretty well.
Yeah.
Because Nintendo doesn't give a flying F about some game preservation sometimes, or the ways they can gouge you for money for the game preservation sometimes. At least, yes, it could be a mistake because then you don't play it in the native hardware, but for those very old games, I mean, at least there's a solution.
Yeah.
But then for
I'm very glad that I found a working emulator that wasn't like I had to go into the ancient archives to find out how to code and get it to work right.
Exactly.
But, thank God.
I got this close to figuring out how to mod my Wii so I could try to download the Metroid Prime Trilogy collection, but I was like, I don't want to go through that hassle because I could easily break it, and my Wii right now is like the only gateway for me to re-experience the GameCube because it's this straight still works somehow. And
I don't know where it is because I lost the laser reader for my Wii, and I haven't been able to get another one for it yet because those are starting to like pick up in price as well. And my GameCube I think works, but then like my audio visual cable for it disappeared. So
really?
I think one of my old roommates might have grabbed it thinking it was his like forever ago, but at this point it's like, what am I going to do? Show up at his house and say, hey, you stole my cable.
So tomorrow I have an HDMI port for the Wii arriving at my house.
Ooh.
Because of the way my TVs are happening, because I have the blue, red, green cables.
Yeah.
And those are working on the TV I have now, but I'm looking into upgrading the TV I have in my room or potentially the TV we have at our living room,
Yeah.
those cables no longer are supported in the later end TVs. It's just HDMI.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? It's only $10. I'm getting this. So I can at least, if I ever want to play with my Wii in the later TV, because it's still alive and kicking, at least I have a port with a cable that works there. With the potential that games may look slightly sharper because HDMI versus the 3 cables, it's subtle, but it's an improved image. So I can't wait for that. It's coming tomorrow. I wish awesome. The one thing I wish I still had was, do you remember the Wavebird controller for GameCube?
I think so. Why? I know the name, and now I gotta look this up.
Yeah, look it up. Wavebird GameCube.
Yeah, that big old wireless sucker.
Yeah, probably one of my favorite controllers of all time. My brother lost the signal receiver and it's there for ours. So I wish I still had it, because I tell you, the cable of a GameCube controller that plugs into a Wii, hella short. If only I could show you what I've done with my table where I have my Wii, so I can at least play Metroid while I'm laying down. It's like we have it so good these days with wireless controllers. I tell you, I could never go back. People would always make the argument, it's like, why would you want to go wireless? You always have to buy batteries, blah blah blah. And it's like, it's crazy now that wireless is like the way that you acquire a controller. It
blows my mind that Xbox still requires AA batteries.
Yes, I understand though. I've finally grown to understand why, because at the very least they future-proof themselves so that their controllers never die. You know what I mean?
How so?
A rechargeable battery eventually loses its charge.
Yeah, I see what
so, but at the same time, it's a hassle. It's a hassle.
At that point, how many PS4 controllers did I go through just because eventually they would drift, break, not want to connect? Something or other would kind of mess up with them anyway. So when that's your only problem,
I would
have to replace them anyway.
Yeah, I will have to say that give props to Microsoft. The Xbox One controller, I gotta give it props. How resilient those suckers are. Like, you can do, I have it here with me. Like, do all this with the sticks, and guaranteed they're not gonna drift. At least not in PlayStation. Like, PlayStation is more likely for it to drift in comparison. So, and also, by the way, playing Metroid Fusion with the Xbox One controller through emulation was chef kiss. It worked so well.
What I'm doing for Zero Mission. And
I told you to play with the Xbox controller.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only one that you can easily plug into the PC and play anyway. Because God forbid you try to plug a PlayStation controller.
Now, quick question: does your computer have Bluetooth?
That is a good question, actually.
You should, because my computer had Bluetooth and I was able to play with my Xbox controller via Bluetooth.
That's something I can pull up on the taskbar. Yeah, okay, I have it.
There you go. Try to register your Xbox controller via Bluetooth, and there you go. You don't have to have it plugged in.
Well, I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose just because I'm sitting in front of the computer anyway. But yeah, I could always try doing that. Would I hit the... Well, you know, we'll figure that out after we stop recording.
Yes. But yeah, that's enough of that. That's been what I have been playing. And since we are not doing a topic this week, to kind of take a little break from topics, that concludes this section of the podcast. Paul, where can people find you?
As always, everyone, you can find me both with my art and hilarious takes on things at Dork of Art on Twitter, and then at YouTube Dork of Art as well. Mostly older items, but also you can sometimes find me at AngelSword21 on Twitch. Alejandro, where can we find you?
They can find me at the Slayer Giant on Twitch, which, by the way, like, circumstances have prevented us from keeping our Halo playthroughs, but we should be able to get those back in no problem. You can find me on Twitter at @A_Dorsegovia. You can find me on Instagram at AlejandroSegovia93, and you can find some of my written content at thecriticalcorner.com. Haven't done much writing, but I'm already cooking my Call of Duty article that I told you that I was writing, because I finally played through all those campaigns. So, and it could be a topic, an evergreen topic sometime. So,
that's true.
Especially with Vanguard coming out this Friday, which I am not buying. So,
me neither.
Yes, at least until sale. So, Paul, it's been a pleasure, and remember
Press X.
to play.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, kitten.